It isn't very often when we come across a trilogy of films that all turn out to be great movies. Even some of the greatest franchises to ever grace film fail to have a trilogy where all of the movies are great. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy had a very polarizing Spider-Man 3, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy faltered with The Dark Knight Rises, and even the Shrek trilogy couldn't be saved with its very lackluster Shrek 3. But every now and then a set of films come by and the entire trilogy turns out to be absolutely amazing. When you think of an amazing trilogy, you think of films like the Lord of the Rings movies or the original Star Wars trilogy. Yet those movies came out so long ago and are decades apart from one another that we don't really get to see these types of movies and perfect trilogies come by. Yet we now live in the era of Dune. The first Dune was very acclaimed by both critics and audiences. Most had the common consensus that it was a great film, but with one critic towards it, that it deserved to be a trilogy. However, those criticisms were quickly drawn back once Denis Villeneuve, the director, confirmed that he is planning for it to be a trilogy, with the first two movies adapting the first book and the third one being Dune Messiah. While the first Dune was seen as mostly good or even great, people still had speculations whether the second one could really give justice to this overly complex and complicated book. Everyone quickly changed their minds when they saw the newly released Dune Part 2. I think I'm just gonna have to say it, this is easily the best sci-fi movie ever made. Hands down. The visuals are absolutely stunning. I don't know why it's like this, but the CGI in this movie just feels so goddamn realistic. When you watch an MCU movie, you watch the visual effects and the CGI, and it doesn't really make you feel anything very often. It feels very plastic, and you don't feel something from the effects that are being shown. The effects in Dune Part 2 absolutely make you feel something. The usage of special and practical effects are so good that it makes you feel immersed all throughout the movie. From the worm riding scenes, the desert scenes, or any time a space vehicle appears, it all looks so good. The cinematography is also amazing. Greg Fraser definitely deserves to win a second Oscar for this. Every shot seems so big and it captures scale so well that it makes you sit in awe as you're watching pretty much every frame coming out from this movie. The performances are all really good. I thought Timothée Chalamet really captured his character well. This character was very complicated by the way where he kind of teeters from one side to the other, and he has a sense of regret but also a sense of duty. And Chalamet does a great job at balancing those two aspects of Paul where it seems very believable. I thought Zendaya was also really good. She's really the heart of the movie in my opinion, where especially in the end, you really feel for her character. Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Austin Butler, everyone else were all so great. He really nailed, especially Austin Butler, that sociopathic character. And I just wish we would have seen more of him. But I gotta say, I think my favorite performance from the movie has got to be Javier Bardem. Out of everyone in the movie, he really felt like the one who was the most immersed into his character, and he really disappeared into the role of Stilgar. He brings a sort of levity to this somewhat one goal in mind character, and he adds layers to Stilgar with his amazing performance. Now for the story itself. Man, this had my eyes glued to the screen for the entire 2 hour and 45-minute runtime. The character motivations, the political intrigue are all so interesting that you do not want to miss a single piece of dialogue. The story is really centered around Paul and how the other characters in his orbit try to influence him for their own personal motivations, selfless or selfish motivations. One complaint I had from the original movie was that Paul kind of felt very unfinished as a character, and I gotta say the reason why this movie works so well, a major reason, is because of how great Paul's character is. Paul feels very complex, but you always know what he wants and what he wishes to happen. He feels very layered, but at the same time grounded, if that makes sense, so that it's not hard to know what he's actually thinking as the main character we are trying to follow. And the progression he just makes in this film is just so freaking good. I'll say that. That's all I'm gonna say, because I don't want to spoil you guys if you haven't read the book already. I think that's really where my personal gripe with the story comes into play, because Paul as a character is very interesting, but some of the characters kind of fall short. Baron is a villain that isn't complex, but he's enough for the story itself. Although I really would have wanted some further layers to his character, I thought it was enough for the story and he served his purpose. I feel like the villains are just not really as interesting as the protagonists of the story, and even some of the side characters like Stilgar or Gurney, for example. Baron, Dave Bautista's character, and Fade Rotha are all pretty one-dimensional characters. Although they serve the story with what it needs and their performances make those characters great and iconic, I feel like they feel very surface level. And the way they kind of exit the movie just feels kind of lackluster. However, those are simply nitpicks, and those are absolutely not enough to let me bring down a single point from this movie, because it is just that good. If the first movie was good enough, and this movie is probably the best sci-fi ever made, and if the third one is at least great, this could easily be in the likes of the original Star Wars trilogy. I mean, in my opinion, the second movie alone is already better than the entire original Star Wars trilogy. Don't attack me, just a personal opinion. I think a lot of people have already said this, but I am so happy that I am able to experience this in the cinema right as it came out. I often look back at the Return of the King sad because I didn't get to experience that movie as it came out, and even though that didn't happen, it's still one of my favorite movies of all time. And the fact that Dune Part 2 is one of the greatest things I've ever seen, and I got to witness it on cinema on the biggest IMAX screen possible as it came out, is just such an experience that I will for sure cherish for the rest of my life. This feels like an event that you just have to witness, and I'm probably going to tell everyone that I know to hop in the Dune trend and watch it. This is the easiest 10 out of 10 I've probably given in my entire movie watching history. Absolutely. And it's gonna be a very tough movie of the year to beat. I don't really see anything that could beat it right now, because that's how good it is. But you know, let's see. Please go and watch it so you can experience this cinematic event on your own.